I'm Shannon Payne, and I am with the AFN. I am the Personal Credits Liaison for the AFN. And I have been talking about personal credits in a couple of previous webinars. We've talked about just personal credits in general with an overview in part 1. In part 2, we looked at the acknowledgement form and looked at specifically how to fill out the acknowledgement form. In part 3, we looked at the redemption form for group educational services, and now we're going to look at the redemption form for the education entities. So when we talk about the education entities, we're looking at the more formal education and training options. So if you look at your redemption form, you will see that on page 1, there is a section for the student to complete, and then the majority of it is for the education entity to complete. So let's look specifically at the form. Section A will be pre-filled and looks like a voucher. And so for example, it'll say this form is to be used by Sally Smith, this form is to be used at First Nations University of Canada for a maximum value of $3,000. So in this pre-filled section, there are a couple of boxes that still need to be filled in. So the student needs to fill in their group, their language preference, and their gender. In section B, the student needs to provide their authorization and their signature. So the authorization is basically checking the box that either allows for the sharing of their information or not. So if you tick yes, that means that you're authorizing the Government of Canada to share your information with other entities for the purposes of processing the credits. If you check no, then you're not authorizing the government to do so. Me, I'm personally recommending that people check yes, because that will help to make a speedier, more efficient process of the entire process. So then make sure that you as a student, that you print, you sign, and you date your form. So then what you do is you take that form into the education entity that you're attending. And for the most part, it'll vary according to organizations, but you'll either be dealing with the financial officer or the registrar or the Aboriginal liaison. So if you take it in, they'll direct you to the right person to fill out the redemption form. So then the education entity will need to fill out section C. So on page 1 at the bottom is the contact information, and that's where you fill out the name of the contact and the organization address, phone number, etc. On page 2 at the top, page 2 in its entirety is a section devoted to the expenses. So the personal credits can be used for tuition, for books, for course supplies, fees, tutoring, computers. And so anything that's a necessary course fee would be outlined on the expense sheet. So an institutional invoice could be used, or you can use page 2. Whatever works more efficiently. But it's important that if you're using your own institutional expense invoice, that you identify the program date and the course date, the course program, and all of the expenses. Then on page 3 is the checklist and declaration. And so what you need to, as an institution, is make sure that you include the students' sections that are filled in, section A and B, all the required information for contacts, the expenses, and also proof of student registration. Then include that with an invoice, sign it, and date it. So we have provided a sample invoice, and you can have a look at this on the screen, where it has, as an example, Blue River College, personal credits invoice, the payee information, the mailing address, the registration number, the total amount of the invoice, and the student name and CEP number. So fairly simple and straightforward. we're not anticipating that education entities will have too much difficulty with this process, as it's pretty much in keeping with the way that most institutions and educational entities do business. There are a couple of questions, though, that have arisen as a result of this process, and so let's talk about them. The first question is, can I use the credits to pay off a student loan? In a nutshell, no. These credits need to be allocated towards a program that a student is currently in or about to start and then finish before the deadline of April 30th, 2015. So you cannot use it for a student loan that was accrued in the past. The other question is, can I use the credits to pay for a course I already took? So in the same situation, you may not have a student loan, but you may have paid for a course that you took perhaps in the spring, but the credits can only be used for courses that are starting or about to start kind of from this moment forward, from the time that you're filling out the form. So that's about it in a nutshell for the redemption process for education entities. And you will notice again that on the redemption form, you do have the address where you can mail the forms. You can also fax them, or you can email them. We're recommending at this point, because of the time constraints that are in place, that you would be best served to email or fax the redemption forms as soon as possible. And again, just a reminder of the deadlines. So the deadline to apply is October 31st, 2014. The deadline for the redemption forms is December 1st, 2014. So these forms that we're talking about must be sent in before December or by midnight on December 1st, 2014. And again, the spend by date is April 2015, April 30th, 2015. If there are any concerns around any denials, students do have the right to appeal. That's it. Thank you very much for your time. Bye-bye.